So, how about another one of those super popular viewer request vlogs? Look at those viewer numbers. 3,000 views for the first video, 1,800 for the second, 1,200 for the third, only 1,000 for the fourth, 900 for the fifth, 700 for the sixth. I said in a previous video I didn't really pay attention to numbers, viewers' numbers, but I suppose even for me the message is clear. So this is the last one, going to marathon my way through the last remaining requests to finally put an end to this bloated April Fool's project. Hope I got them all. So here we go. Andre Gallo. Hey Roger, I have a question for you. If Sega contacted you and asked you to make Sonic Dissected style videos that tackled subjects ranging from character level design to gameplay, basically Sega asking you to make many videos with what your own series to do's and don'ts so that you can show it to their teams, would you do it? And how would it make you feel? It would make me feel embarrassed and I probably wouldn't do it. Look, the thing with these Sonic Dissecteds, I'm trying to write them mostly from a perspective of understanding myself or others around me. Like, you feel something is wrong or right and try to figure out why, but it's entirely from a dumb audience member perspective and not from a developer's perspective, at least right now. Maybe in the earlier days when I started this series I had some more dreamlike aspirations and used more direct and intense language, but I regret most of that now. I'm more careful with what I'm saying. So me going in there in Sega's headquarters and telling super experienced professionals what to do probably end up like a disaster. I mean, yeah, I did have that enormous speech a few videos ago about how I would design a Sonic game, I suppose, but it was entirely as a thought experiment or as a dream. But yeah, I should make some indie games first before I would have the balls to go tell a real developer what to do, and even then I'm probably out of my place, so, The only angle I would feel kind of comfortable is from a more psychological aspect, how their work comes across to us, and even then it would be about one specific mindset of one specific set of Sonic fans, and I assume Sega's aiming their arrows at a larger group of people. But as a full-out, I'm gonna tell you what to do and how to save Sonic, nah, I'm not Screw-Attack. So no, unpaid amateur trying to figure out his own thoughts from those around him is my place in the world, and definitely not higher. They can use my videos as a possible source of feedback, but that's about it. SiliconBassist, have you played Eggman Hates Furries? I'm curious what you think about its bosses. I never played it before, since the title made it sound like a trolling hate game, and since the game immediately starts with a weird dream sequence nightmare thing that scared me off. Now, especially for you, I checked out some footage from later on, and whoa! This game is entirely different than I expected. I expected a Sonic X or a Sonic Dreams kind of nightmare sim, but this is pretty cool. The game seems to be largely a boss run, and it's spectacular. Sonic seems to be programmed like he was in Lost World, being able to run up walls and ceilings, but this fan game does a way better job at making use of those abilities than Sonic Lost World ever did. Bosses are crazy, you're constantly running around and falling through deep mine shafts while giant robotic drills are chasing after you and shooting bombs all over the place. Very spectacular, I love it. Reminds me a lot of Gunstar Heroes in terms of creativity and dynamic. Man. See, I don't have to tell Sega how to make games, I should just hold a gun to their faces and tell them to play some fan games. So yeah, what Luke and I wanted out of boss fights, as we said in the previous video, them to feel natural to the default gameplay, which in Sonic Eggman Hates Furries they are. Well, especially since fighting bosses is pretty much the default gameplay there to begin with, but yeah. They would still feel perfectly in place in a regular Sonic platform game, like the Sonic Advance 2 bosses, but on steroids. Feels dynamic and cinematic. They're short and sweet, intense. Didn't notice the music, seems to be weirdly distorted remixes of older Sonic tunes. That's the weird thing about this fan game, it has an extremely uncomfortable, weird, and easy horror vibe to it from start to finish. As I said, I was pretty much expecting a Sonic X twist or something at any point, but that never really happened. Most creepy thing, and that it really depends on your tastes, I know plenty of you who actually found this cute or great, is that the game takes Sonic and Tails' relation pretty far. Also, Eggman uses the Chaos Emeralds on himself, which can be unexpected, but that was pretty cool. Kirbysmith64, how about an explanation about the different definitions of the word edgy compared to how it's commonly used? The word is always tossed around on the internet, but I don't think people quite know what it means. It could mean things like avant-garde and trend-setting, or nervous and irritable, etc. Well, is there anything left for me to add to that? What you said, so even Sonic 1 is edgy. Trend-setting indeed. So in a way, Wisp's and Mario Galaxy levels are just as edgy as Shadow's gameplay is. Kinda avant-garde. Maybe trend-setting? I hope not. But yeah, whatever. In internet debates, words are never meant to be taken literally, although you do have to spell them correctly or grammar Nazis take you to camp, and logic is never meant to be questioned. It's just opinions in general, internet logic clashing. Shadows dark and edgy because internet meme. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about the logic behind it. Point is, when Hollywood tried to be avant-garde and try something new in the late 90s, early 2000s, it usually meant making things gritty and dark and intense, although you could argue that's still happening with Batman vs. Superman, Deadpool and such. So the word edgy is now completely locked in that time frame and that mindset, it seems. Although you'd think the internet loves another word standing for irritatable when describing Sonic games, but alas, the dark edgy meme overrules that meaning. Ah. Christian W.S. Platinum Games Dissected. Well, gee, another broad topic. Platinum... I hate names. Platinum Games, the remaining half of Capcom that isn't Street Fighter. Mad World and Okami are the only games I really love from them. Bayonetta is a little too scripted, or something about it doesn't click to me. But yeah, they got style to spare. Maybe I should try that wonderful 101 game some more, but the demo didn't tie me over. I don't really like action games centered around a controller gimmick, unless it's a light gun shooter or something. I wish I had a lot of positive things about them to say. They seem to be my kind of designers, but I haven't quite got the game I fell in love with super much. Although Mad World comes very close, that's a game I really love. Great sense of humor, great controls. I like its sense of weight to its fighting. But yeah, I'm usually not super into horrific, gory violence. But when you can impale people on a giant soda bottle and launch them into a giant dartboard, count me in, that's amazing. Although simple things like just chucking people into an airplane turbine or in front of a train also never tires. It's fun to play, although I'm not a big super fan of the black and white art style. The comic book textures are awesome, but staring at a black and white game does get a little tiring to my eyes after a while. Not to mention Wiimote controls. And I like Okami. Immensely satisfying to see an angry old lady run towards you to attack, quickly draw a bomb next to her, and watch her explode and fly into the air. That's great. Okami's like a Zelda game without the dungeons, or at least more condensed dungeons, which suit my tastes more. Although even with that game, my focus faded before the end. Not sure why. Beautiful game, Beautiful Joe. Played a second game once, one level, didn't quite click for me. God Hand, that is a game I should try out someday. I haven't given a shot yet. Didn't like Anarchy Reigns, too far removed from Mad World. It's missing something. It's kind of generic to me. I don't like the environments or the enemies or fighting doesn't feel as satisfying anymore. Haven't played Star Fox Zero and probably won't because I already hate Nintendo games that make me look at two screens at the same time or do something stupid with the controller, even before Nintendo fans notice that. So when even actual Nintendo fans start noticing how annoying that is, then I assume the game must be really bad on that regard, so I'm not looking forward to that. And that's all my experience with Platinum games. They have a very powerful style and ideas that I like, so I should love them, but I haven't quite gotten the game I really love yet. Wish I could love Bayonetta or something, but something just doesn't click for me, I don't know why. Too scripted or too epic for its own good, probably. SpeedComics, I would like to propose anything else, but my ego keeps shouting to suggest you dissect my comics and nothing else comes to mind. I'm already guessing that won't be fitting to see. Surprised I didn't get more Vanity requests. Okay, your comics. I like your color use, bright and popping. Writing style, very straight and to the point. Not super much style to it. Can work both positive and negative, I suppose. There's something about the character design that's weird to me. Like it's in between a detailed, cool character design and a super simple comedy kind design. A simplicity, but with body proportions and poses of an anime that has a weird effect on me. I don't know. Something tells me you should either make the characters more detailed and cool or more simple and chibi, whatever you prefer, but now it's in a weird in-between place. Nice camera shots, more dynamic than I usually do them. Settings a bit dull. I like some fighting moves. Pulling the guy into a headbutt, that's pretty cool. Story has a nice setup and payoff thing going on. Personally, I'm not a super big fan of larger-than-life, being big, chosen one, macho fighting stuff. That sort of themes, that's not really my thing. So it's very hard for me to be super specific about your story. It's a genre kind of story I'm not super into, so I can't really help much. You put your soul into it, so it really seems symbolically based on real struggles and thoughts you seem to be going through, so that's fueling it with energy, that's neat. But yeah, thoughts and struggles I don't super relate to, or at least handle differently. I recognize it, but don't quite feel it, so I'm afraid I'm not your audience here. But yeah, nice color use. Bright yet grounded. I really like that. Question mark. What a nice name. I would like to see a Megaman X Dissected focusing on the level design changes in each game. Alright, hell, you want a 2-hour analysis on the level design of Megaman X like I did for Sonic now, huh? I feel like I'm approaching Aaron Cicoleta's territory with this now, but I haven't really studied it in depth. Of course, one thing I always love about the Megaman X levels is that they're usually designed around the idea that you're really infiltrating a base and going through an environment. It's all about starting outside and climbing the walls and infiltrating buildings through weird openings and climbing and dropping down. Always really having this sense I'm really traversing through an actual base, especially in the early games. I remember being disappointed in how flat the levels were in Megaman X4, much less of that traversing through a building and much more straightforward shooting and jumping. Although they did have a much more higher cinematic value to them, so it didn't bother me too much. I kind of like the idea of the 3D sections in X7, so that'll lose my credibility in the eyes of Mega Man fans now, yay! But yeah, Mega Man X7 had some serious pacing issues, too many breaks, too many interruptions. Kind of agree on that, and that there's too many interruptions of any of the Mega Man X games with attacks, especially the later ones. I mean, I like the idea of a dispatcher radioing in information to Mega Man, but it sucks that it pauses the game all the time. Wish it could just talk during gameplay, especially in the later games when it's voice acted. Mega Man Legends was kind of weird in that way, sometimes pausing the game, but sometimes just letting the voice appear while you're still moving. But yeah, I'm afraid I don't have time to study them super closely now. Mega Man X8 I mostly remember for being super gimmicky, like every level had some sort of weird thing going on. Well, I don't mind the occasional gimmick stage, but I remember being really irritated that the game didn't have any regular stage almost, without something weird happening. I think in general, Mega Man X3 is my favorite Mega Man X game in terms of level design. It used the dynamic level traversing the most. Or they love a level in the harbor, where you just start in a harbor and then you go into a submarine and you blow it up and then the submarine sinks and all of a sudden the level's all vertically, like you really feel like you're in a sub that's sinking. That was pretty awesome. It also has my favorite soundtrack, besides a few selective tracks from X5. I like Mega Man X2 more in terms of level themes, giant dinosaur robot rampaging through the city, or a junkyard and the weird weather station building. That's some great locations. But yeah, that's about it. I'm afraid I don't have much analysis to share at this moment. I never really played Mega Man X6. That didn't appeal to me. Maybe if I ever do a Mega Man marathon, I can talk a bit more about it. But right now, I'm trying to be not super slow in my animation work, and already failing at that, so I'm afraid this is it. Siilikala, what were your first thoughts, besides enthusiasm, I guess, after that picture of the Marsupilami in the last page of Spiro Fantasium album Le Groom de Sniper Alley? Le Groom de Sniper Alley. Well, there's a question 95% of the audience has no idea what we're talking about. Talking about a Belgian comic, Spiro, something, Robidoux. Basically Tintin's less successful rival, though I personally prefer Spiro. History for context, Spiro started a couple of years before the Second World War. Every 20 years or so there's a new team of writers and artists taking over, so there's very distinct eras, blah 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 blah. Anyway, during Spiro's golden years, that is when the most beloved of the artists, Francois, took over the series, there were a bunch of side characters created for the series, but for legal reasons they were never allowed to return in the series afterwards when new artists took over. Although all those characters got their own spin-off series with their own artists, so whatever. Point is, apparently now decades later, it's cool again for the side characters to return to the main series, and the most recent album teased the return of the Marsupilami, a super popular animal sidekick thing, who Americans may know because he had a very brief animation series from Disney, not to mention a Sega Mega Drive/Genesis game. Anyway, my thoughts, sad thing for Marsu is I was more impressed by the other cameos. To be honest, I was more geeked out by the brief cameo of Gaston Lagaffe, even completing the style of that spin-off, so that was cool. Also, the mafiosi Vito Fiasco returning, a little more obscure bad guy from my personal favorite team working on Spiro. So, Marsu got overshadowed by all that to me. Oh well, still cool he'll return. Chihiro's going even back to the jungle, typical plot from the Golden Age, so seems like a throwback adventure coming up. Neat. Now, between the time this question was asked and I answered it now, the comic has actually been released. I'm not read it yet. I haven't had the time to go to a comic book store. They're a little out of the way here. But, yeah, I got nothing interesting to say, and everyone probably confused, so let's move on. DarthBobCat. If Sega, the company, was going to be sold, who would you want them to be sold to? Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, Activision, Blizzard, Valve, etc. That's a tough question. You know, Sony seems the closest fit. Wouldn't mind them taking over, though Sonic's future would be short since Sony seems to be going through their mascots like it's nothing. Microsoft, nah, too technical and nerdy. Nintendo, nah, they're the polar opposite of Sega. I suppose their obsession and focus on the core of the games would make them very interesting when it comes to arcade games, but those need more fluff and spectacle. Their arcade games would probably have too many stupid things, like make it more noob-friendly. I don't want any blue shells in my Sega arcade games. Activision, Blizzard, both had a bit of an action arcade history, I guess, but not anymore. A Blizzard Golden Axe would be neat, or Shining Soul, but why would Blizzard bother? They got their own things. Valve, do they still even make games? Night, Space Channel 5, and Jet Set Radio never got to a third main game in their series, so I guess they're doomed with Valve around. For my picks, Sumo. They seem to be the company who is better at being Sega than Sega themselves. But can they sustain entire franchises? They seem to be more talent for hire, so I don't know. Then there's Platinum Games, although I'm not sure. Many of the games seem a little too scripted for me. Capcom and Namco are also close family members when it comes to Sega, but yeah, Capcom can barely get their own franchises running in Namco. Namco doesn't do much anymore, do they? I like to see the folks behind Saints Row try something, or the Burnout team. I don't know. Really, Sony's the middle ground, I guess. Let's see how they handle Shenmue 3. Shamex 2. Yokai Watch, please. Yokai Watch. It's everywhere. The next big thing being requested a million times. Mostly by the same guy, though. Okay, so I already said when I talked about anime that I don't like going to super anime longer than 25 episodes or something, because, you know, I got a job, a girlfriend, family, animation work, making these videos. I can't afford to go watch 50,000 episodes. Not to mention, look, I got nothing against kid shows and entertainment. There's plenty I still like, and it's too late for me to prove to anyone I'm not a hopeless nerd. Regardless, I am coming to a point where I'm not really looking for even more kid entertainment on purpose. Gotta have more variation in my entertainment so I can still talk to people of my age, you know? So I was never super interested in this anime. I checked out the first episode because people kept requesting that I did, and the show does look amazing. Great artwork, great animation. Pretty cool that they're going to some darker stuff in this kid show, pets being roadkill or parents fighting, and I suppose having invisible ghosts hanging out to impact people's emotions and mind is neat. Although, with already two hyperactive main characters mugging the screen, I was not motivated to keep going, not a fan of random energetic Japanese humor. But yeah, then fans told me that the show doesn't get interesting until episode 25 or something, but then you need to watch episode 10 first to understand that, and then there's a story arc lasting for another 50,000 episodes. Yeah. The game looked way more interesting to me. I prefer a game because it has more impact on the pace. It's quicker to just kind of quickly play it for a bit when I'm in the bus or waiting somewhere, which I can't really do with a TV show. I like RPG set in modern days, and Level 5 is a good RPG company, so I got the video game instead. Seems to follow the anime story as far as I can tell. The two stories the first episode showed up at least. So I like the game. Big city to explore, finding fun. Story's super underwhelming so far, but I'm still in an early point. Although I remember stuff like Megaman Battle Network picking up faster. Was already stopping terrorists from blowing up a dam a few chapters in. We'll see. I love the bit where suddenly fogs come in and then there's a giant monster chasing you, and the usually random goofy Whisper, your main sidekick, stops goofing around and just freaks out, just screaming at you to run. That was a pretty awesome and intense moment, and otherwise endless series of just goofy silliness. I like that. But yeah, generally speaking, it's Pokemon with ghosts. Although I compared more with Megaman Battle Network, since the main kids never go on a journey or anything like the Digimon kids and such did. They just stay around town, as far as I can tell. Storytelling can be a bit wonky. They spend so much time explaining the yokai and their spirit world that they often forget to establish the kids' friends and such. So your supposed best friends or people the main character should be super close with constantly drop in and out of the story without much of a setup. So that's kind of weird. Oh well. XenonNSMB, Sega's console failure, Sega Saturn and Dreamcast failing and causing them to start making consoles. Dissected. I'm not sure if there's much for me to say. I thought this was well documented. Sega has to rush other companies feeling betrayed that Sega was screwing around with the launch date of the Saturn too much and killing it off too quickly, and they were too nervous, too fast, it lost them trust, and when they finally got their act together with the fantastic Dreamcast, it was too late and too many allies had abandoned them. But I'm not a technical wizard, so I'm not the right guy to ask for specifics, really. Eneomas, if you could, please consider talking about creativity versus conventions in a creative yet conventional manner.
People crave for creativity, but are scared of the dark, so they need conventions to gain the courage to seek out creativity. In order for creativity to be discovered and enjoyed, it needs to be surrounded by conventions. It's all yin and yang.
Thanks, Luke. Very creative. Next, someone asked about Dark Souls. Luke?
Can you make a Dark Souls Dissected? I do know about its games, and I have only played the demo of Dark Souls 3 at a London comic convention last year. Whilst everyone else managed to get to the boss, I was horribly burned to a crisp by a dragon, got hacked to pieces by the undead, and I fell off a ladder and cracked my skull open. The Souls games are known for their tough difficulty, and it harkens back to the old games on the NES, like Castlevania, Ninja Gaiden, and in a way Dragon's Lair for the NES. You have hundreds of enemies coming at you, and your goal is to stay alive for as long as you can, using strategy, memory of what to do and where to go, and trial and error. And even though you have died so many times, you want to keep coming back and try again. You want to use what you have learned from your mistakes to beat this knight who can rip your spine open using your weapons and your abilities to your advantage. Or you get so frustrated you just want to leave and come back another time, because you try to take on someone who looks like Sauron with a weapon that's about as good as a blunt pencil.
Thanks, Luke. As for me, I think a friend of mine showed me the first Dark Souls to try and get me interested, but I just found it boring, generic, and very grey. Although the marketing campaign of Dark Souls 3 interests me, but I don't know. The vanilla Dark Age swords and sorcery is not really my thing. The guy in the corner, FKA Christoferkk. How about the idea of animation media aimed at kids having deeper meanings, character depth, etc., and why that idea is looked down upon by some people? Several reasons. One, stop using the term aimed at children and use suitable for the whole family. With the 4 kids terminology, you're already locking adults out of the equation to begin with. Second, about cartoons being looked down upon by a lot of people. I think it's a psychological thing that around your teen years you start to despise and hate childish things. It's a programmed brain thing to speed up your growth. Although the older you get, the more that fear of the childish attitude starts to fade, so older people are all for youth again, although usually their youth and not the current youth. So older people are usually way more open to cartoons and silly things than young adults. Then, speaking of animations and cartoons specifically, there's also the fact that we're still feeling the consequence of the 70s and 80s, when cartoons were hijacked by the government to brainwash children with ham-fisted morals, which made the quality of animations drop very low, so people who grew up in that era, that are now the adults in their prime, still associate cartoons with that brainless junk. And finally, this is admittedly one of my own crackpot theories, but based on observations I made on people around me in the world, more so than any facts or scientific research, so take this with a big grain of salt. But again, focusing on cartoons and animation specifically, there's something about how alpha men and women look at the world. Let's just say that people who are very successful in life, in business, in sex, in power, and money, they usually look at the world very context-driven, far as I can tell. They look at people around them or locations around them and analyze every detail to see whether it's worth their time and energy to get money or power out of it. So their brains are trained to really focus on the details of the real world, of the context of every item or thing that exists. How strong your handshake is, the brands of clothes you wear, blah, 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 blah. So when they're confronted with a cartoon, look, with a real person you can look at their eyes and their clothes and their body shape and assess what kind of person he is, or if he or she is worth pursuing for money, power, and sex. But with a cartoon, it's much more abstract and symbolic, so that way of looking at the world doesn't work anymore. I think that freaks them out and causes them to dismiss it. So I think, and that's my own weird little theory, that's why important people don't care for cartoons. They can't observe or analyze abstract shapes like how they can usually observe the real world, so it makes them uncomfortable. And the alpha men and women in the world always decide what's cool or not cool, so yeah. Chicken Fdisoruhg. Your names. Talk about other animators and critics in the YouTube community and your opinions on them, like Animated James, Mysterious Mr. Enter, Nostalgia Critic, etc. I made a Dissect on a Nostalgia Critic before. Generally speaking, my opinions are all over the place, but generally positive. Sometimes he's amazing, sometimes obnoxious. He's a hard one to really encapsulate in one clear phrase. So yeah, just watch the previous video I made. Animated James, I've seen some of his videos, but not consequent enough to really form any strong feelings or thoughts. Nice animations, good face expressions, way better body gestures than I do. Of course, bothers to do lip sync, unlike me. His humor is a bit too on the nose for me, though. Mysterious Mr. Enter, not watch much of it, so don't have much of an opinion. I prefer a more analytic point of view, with opinions being more, well, a starting point or a result of the analysis. While from the few episodes I've seen, and it isn't much, but he seems to be more emotional and immediately judgmental as far as his points go, and that's not quite my style, so I don't know. But yeah, I don't watch many internet shows, so don't take that as a full review or judgmental thing, just quick first impressions. If you have to know what my favorite internet personalities are that I watch the most, Brad Jones, he's comfort food, just a pleasant voice to listen to. Red Letter Media, love them, great insight. Spoonie, well, I would if he still made videos. Also, one of those critics I sometimes love and sometimes despise, really depends. I listen to Markiplier sometimes, also just for the voice. Clint from Lazy Game Reviews, another guy I can listen to talking about nothing for hours. Guru Larry's cool, another great voice. I like people with great voices. Nikonagwa Magna, got his name wrong, sorry, he has some nice videos. Matthew Mythoses, great reviews of Mario and Zelda, helps me see the gameplay quality of those games where I usually don't really care. I follow Maddox, one of the original internet satirists, mostly through his podcast, but he has occasional videos too. Watched a lot of the Great Clemens stuff, though I took a break after he got a little too preachy. Still need to get back again sometime. Awkward thing about Great Clement and Clint from LGR is that I actually got both of them to voice act for me for a cartoon that I still haven't finished, so that's something eating on my conscience whenever I watch their videos too. I have to finish so much stuff yet. And that's the internet personalities. As for animators, hate to admit I don't really follow any. I guess the only one I really follow is Recorder Dude from Sonic Paradox, since he's a close friend of mine now. Yeah, so I don't really follow all that many animators. Would probably just give me a crippling inferiority complex, probably. Not to mention, most videos I watch, I don't really watch. I usually only listen because I'm busy working on my own stuff, and that's kind of hard to do with animation, so yeah. And that's it. That's the last reviewer request topic I could find. If I still overlooked yours, it's possible. This was a very messy project and I could very much have overlooked some, so I guess just type them again in the comments and I'll answer them there. But as far as these lazy vlogs are concerned, I'm done. So back to regular videos again as soon as I finish one, which can take forever. The upcoming weekend, I'll spend most of my time held hostage by birthdays and family stuff. So, yeah, till next time, which could take a while.